going to walk you through our new salmon resource map that's now linked through the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board's website. So when you go to lcfrb.org, you'll see a number of tabs on our homepage, and you can now click on the one on the far right called Salmon Resource Map. And that's going to take you to a new landing page where we introduce the scope of the Lower Columbia Salmon Resource Map. We have a link out, and we also have some additional context on the types of resources, so habitat strategy priorities, and then recovery mapping resources that you will find available in the map, as well as the 3 initial phases of adding map resources and habitat strategies to the web map. So right now we're in phase 1, which is our initial release of the resource map, but over the next year or so, we'll be implementing what we're calling phase 2 and phase 3, which will include regional barrier information and priorities for the Lower Columbia salmon recovery region. And then our focused investment habitat action priorities will be added a goal date of spring 2025. So you can go ahead and click on the image of the map, and that's going to take you out to the online web map tool. There's a landing page here that welcomes you to the resource map and provides a really similar overview as what we have posted on the LCFRB webpage, as well as a data disclaimer statement. You can go ahead and click the X out of that. If you want to revisit that landing page at any point, you can click this information button up in the right-hand corner, and that will bring you back to that welcome information. And it also has a what we're calling more resources tab, which has some additional links, mostly to our subbasin plans for the planning subbasin units for our region. And these have links out to different documents. So you can get to our recovery plan, as well as our conservation sustainable fisheries plan under the Lower Columbia regional resources. Our lead entity resources include our Habitat Grants Program, as well as the project database Salmon Recovery Portal managed by RCO. And then each of the subbasin names are shown here, and you can click on these and find recovery priorities from the subbasin chapter, as well as links out to those subbasin chapters. And then if there's watershed assessment or strategy documents for these areas, there'll be a link to that too. I'm going to minimize the table for the moment and focus on the map display itself. So you'll see the map imagery over here on the left, and then the layers list with all of the different layer options that you can click on and off to view and organize information. When you first come to the map, the only layers that are shown are the statewide Washington Integrated Fish Distribution, or SWIFTI, streamlines, and this is provided by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. This is what we're recommending folks rely on if they're trying to understand current and potential distribution of salmon and steelhead across the different subbasin units. You can zoom in and see those streamlines shown here in blue. And you can always click on a streamline, and it'll show you the different information for each particular species. The other layer that is shown when you first land is our subbasins, which are our watershed areas from the recovery plan. And you'll see the labels for those different subbasin units as well. There's a lot of great information on population recovery priorities and viability status that's associated with these subbasin boundaries. So whenever you click on one of those, you can see the strata that particular subbasin is found in. So in this case, the Cascade strata. If that subbasin is considered a steelhead gene bank by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, or it's a salmonid management zone for either Chinook or coho salmon. And then you'll see the population names and recovery designations, which are either primary, contributing, or stabilizing, and viability progress information or statuses for each population associated with a particular subbasin. So in this case, this is showing coho for the North Fork Toutle population. Baseline viability is what it was assumed this population viability was at the time of ESA listing, so it was very low. New information that we developed in partnership with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is our 2020 viability status. So in this case, it's low. And then you'll see the ESA delisting viability goal shown here. So in this case, it's high. If you have to scroll down, there's a lot of information in these subbasin layers. If there's a population that's not found in a particular subbasin, you'll just see blank values in the case of late fall Chinook. And then in some cases, you'll see asterisks next to the 2020 viability status information, and that's because those are based on professional judgment rather than quantified data from monitoring. This also links out to our subbasin plan if you want a little bit more context on what viability is and the recovery priorities and the recovery designations. You can click on any of the layers that you want to over here on the right-hand side. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the layer, you can always click these three dots here. This accordion, the little three lines right here, shows you the symbology of that particular layer. So you'll see that for the fish distribution streamline shown in blue, and for the subbasin polygons with that black outline. The three dots will give you opportunities to look at details, which has a lot of descriptive information, at least in the case of the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board data, as we have recommended habitat strategy applications for each layer, and then a little bit of context and background on the sourcing for that information and descriptions of the different attribute values that you'll find for each of those layers. You can open it in a separate map viewer. Right now, we don't have a download option, but that's something that's in the works. So just go ahead and contact me. My email address is shown right there if you've got questions about accessing the data. You can also view it in a table, or you can export it as the table data. So as export as a CSV, and you can open that up in Excel if you just want to see the data attributes. You can also see the data attributes down here in the table view for any of the layers. So this is showing for the SRP project points, but we could go to the subbasins here and see all of the information across the different subbasins. You can also filter or show or hide different columns for a particular layer by clicking on this icon right here. So this is all the different field options. You could unclick it if you don't want to see it displayed in the table view. And then if you want to filter or zoom to a particular area, or you also have the option to export from here. So I'll just show you the filter tool very quickly. So this again is the Lower Columbia River subbasins. You always want to make sure if you're filtering that the layer is actually clicked on in the layer list so you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and click this add button and go ahead and click add. Let's just organize it by let's grab our fall Chinook populations with 2020 viability status, and you've got different options for looking at that. So we'll say contains, see what it does for this one. Actually, let's say is, in this case, let's write medium and see what happens. I'll click this little button here. And as you can see, this filters a subset of the subbasins based on this filter here. And so then you can unclick it and I'll go back and unfilter that. And so you can always add additional filters as well. Okay, so just a couple other of the layer options. We still have our ecosystem diagnosis and treatment priorities, which were shown in our older habitat strategy map, Salmon Port. And you can keep those on at the same time as the Swifty streamlines if you're looking for comparisons. So you can see the Swifty streamlines here in blue, and you can see the EDT streamlines behind there with the color coding. Just let me click that one on, the symbology showing the tier ratings there. You can click, and for any layers that overlap and are turned on in the layer list, it's going to show you some pop-up values. So this one is showing the EDT reach information. So we have our restoration and protection potential ratings for this particular stream reach, a generalized description of its location, reach length, and then our species reach potential ratings if at the time that EDT was developed, a particular population was modeled as being present in the stream reach. So if they weren't, then you'll see a blank value. So in this case, you only see it for winter steelhead and coho salmon. And then the multi-species restoration ratings, which should be familiar to folks that used our previous system, Salmon Port. So these are restoration ratings considering all the potential species that might be utilizing this particular stream reach, going from low, medium, and high. You can click these arrows if you want to see what the other visible layers are pop-up data are showing. In this case, you can see over here, there's 9 different layers that I was able to click on, and you can use these buttons to go through that. So this is the subbasin layer. And again, you can see all of that information on viability status And this is now getting into the SWFT streamlined distribution data. So you have the distribution type, the particular stream name and species run. This is for coho. It's modeled presence, documented presence, and then presumed presence for fall Chinook, modeled presence for fall Chinook, documented presence for winter steelhead, and modeled distribution for winter steelhead, as well as chum presumed presence. SWFT is a data set that's maintained by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So if you want to learn a little bit more about those different data values, you can always come out here. And if you've got questions about which distribution types to work with, I'm always happy to try and help answer those questions. A new layer for this web map then is related to land cover analysis, so land cover change information, and then land cover information itself, which was developed through a project with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we have high resolution change detection polygons. This takes a little bit of time to load, so I recommend you zoom in if you want to see that. But this is showing change in land cover type, primarily between the years 2011 and 2017. And it's color-coded, the symbology over here, you can see it's color-coded by what DFW calls the change agent. So you can see that starting to come in here. Most of the change polygons are related to either tree removal or forestry types. And you can click on these. It's still loading. That's why we recommend you zoom in to see this information. And it shows you the start and end comparison year. So again, this was a forestry related change when looking at land cover between the years 2011 and 2017. And you'll see estimates in percent cover for that change value. And again, you can always click on the three dots if you want to get a little bit more information on how that data was developed. And I think, do I have it in the pop-up? I don't. I think you would click on the other layer. So that's the change detection polygons themselves, but then we have a summarization of land cover from that same project in what we call our Lower Columbia River landscape units. So I'm going to turn that on here, turn off a couple of the others. So this is color coded based on what we call landscape unit types. So these are primarily based on major land use programs, as well as some river corridor types. So there's the bulk of the Lower Columbia River region is delineated in some type of forestry landscape unit type. So private forest lands in the lighter green, moving into state forest lands in that sort of like medium green, and then the two darker greens, some type of national forest under Gifford Pinchot. The yellow is more like unincorporated county areas, rural residential and agricultural. It's that landscape unit type. And then urban growth areas are shown in dark orange. So you'll see those for each of the UGAs in the Lower Columbia River region. When you click on a particular landscape unit, it's delineated by subbasin. So let me turn that back on. So there's types that expand across multiple subbasin unit polygons, but they're delineated and land cover information is summarized within each subbasin. So I clicked on private forest lands for the Toutle subbasin, and you can see estimates of tree height, as well as different cover types and the change data. So summarized at this broader landscape unit scale, but you can also click on the individual change detection polygons if you want to get an idea of where within that landscape unit this tree decrease actually occurred. So this landscape unit has 86% tree cover, a rate of change of 11% when we looked at tree cover between 11 and 2017. And you can also click on the link at the bottom of this pop-up to get a little bit more information on the high resolution land cover project and the methods that go into that. For those that are working in the Upper Cowlitz and Subbasin River subbasins, we've added some data related to the Upper Cowlitz Habitat Strategy, which was a community project that we worked on back in between the years 2017 and 2019. And this is now information that can be used to support grant applications for the Cowlitz River Restoration grant program. So if you zoom in, you can see landscape units, which are shown here in orange, and then individual habitat actions, which are located along the upper Cowlitz main stem and some of the lower tributaries, and then the Subbasin River main stem and some of the major tributaries. If you want to get an idea of the information there, you can see ecological ratings for different watershed process types from that upper Cowlitz Subbasin habitat strategy for each one of the landscape units that were identified in that project. And you can also get a link out to the broader report, which has a lot more context and background information on the process and the methods that went into this project. If you want to get an idea of individual actions that are recommended in these two subbasins, you can click on individual habitat action polygons. Because I have the subbasin layer here, that'll pop up as well. So you just have to click through until you see the UCC habitat action. It shows you the action type, which is also shown in the symbology. So these are the action types which are used for that symbology. Generalized acreage and project information and fish effects, as well as cost indicator and a feasibility rating. Again, there's more details on that in the Upper Cowlitz Subbasin habitat strategy report. If you want to get an idea, not just of habitat action recommendations, but past work, you can click on the Salmon Recovery Portal project point data. So this is data that is coming from RCO for the Lower Columbia lead entity area. So when you zoom out and you look at our subbasins, well, it does actually have some project points in the white salmon. This is data that we're displaying, but we're not necessarily editing. And it's organized by project status information. So you've got completed through dormant and planned and proposed project points. You can click on individual project points and get a little bit more. Should have probably clicked off some of the other layers, but we'll get there eventually. Maybe not. Okay, let me click off some of these other ones. Okay, so this is the project point itself. I clicked on an older one. Let me go to a different part of the region so you can see a little bit more current information. So you'll see the project name and number, its project type. So this is a planning or design project. The sponsor, in this case, this is a project that was sponsored by the Cowlitz Indian tribe. Description details. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the project, you can always go out to the PRISM project record for it, if it has one, or the SRP project record. So this takes you directly to the project record in these databases, and there's a lot more details in terms of funding sources and implementation in terms of restoration and conservation or planning metrics. And you can do the same thing for the PRISM project record. So that takes you, if it's a project funded by RCO, it'll take you out to that RCO contract page for more details. We also have filtering options for SRP project points. I'm just going to zoom out again. And you can click over on this filter tab right here. And so these are your different filtering options. You can use one or a combination of them. I'll just show you what some of these look like. It's important that you have the layer actually clicked on in the layer list so you can see how the filters display. So if we only want to look at completed work, for instance, you'll see that's just showing the dark green. Maybe we only want to see active projects, might be a little bit more obvious. And it zooms if it's a subset of your view extent. So let's say we're looking at active projects. You could look at particular project types. You could say, I want to see all active restoration projects. Or let's go back to completed because there's going to be more. We could do completed and active. You could do multiple selections. So we're saying we want to see all restoration, or maybe ones that are also have a little bit of design and restoration work. You can look for a particular project sponsor. So see if there's any for Clark County. There are a few. It zoomed in there into some parts of the East Fork Lewis River Subbasin. I clicked it off in the box here, but you can also use this little trash can icon right here if you want to unselect an individual filter option. You can look at funding programs too. So there's a little hint here on if you're looking just for surfboard grants, because there's multiple funding programs that surfboard projects could be associated with. So like the Salmon State, I'm sorry, not Salmon States, Salmon State projects and the Salmon Federal projects, for instance, include surfboard projects. And you can also look at it by budget. So say you want to look at projects that are 500,000 and see the hint on this one too, where it says no dollar signs or commas. See if we get any. So that's something. Maybe we'll say less than 750, 1, 2, 3. And that further minimizes it. Or maybe you just want to see projects that are greater than 1 million. Or less than 1 million. So that's a bigger world. You can also look at project start dates. You can say, I want to see projects that started before January 2020. And that'll show up here, and that will also filter. If you want to change all of your filters, you can always click this little refresh. It says reset all filters. And if you want to see what it looks like in a table view, you can always come down here and make sure you've selected SRP project points. And this will show the data records for your filter. And then you also have the option if you're filtering and you want to export the information, you can come down here and click export and export to CSV and open that up in Excel. We also have layers that hopefully help folks with putting together design documents for their grant proposals. So I'm going to show you some of those. So we have our subbasin boundaries. But we also have, if you zoom in, you can look at parcel boundaries. And those are shown there in black, or section and township details as well. A little hard to see it both at the same time. So I'll turn off the parcels, but there you can see the sections and the parcels. And you can also look at LiDAR information if you want to get an idea of channel conditions other than just the aerial imagery. You can also use imagery. Let me show you that over here. So if you click on the base map options here, give it a moment to load. You can click on imagery as your background if you want to see that, or if you just would like to have as minimalist as possible, you could do something like this light gray canvas option because maybe you're more interested in the actual hill shade itself. If you go to the drawing tool over here, you can actually draw a particular polygon, selecting color and transparency. So let's just do a green one, make it somewhat transparent, and maybe you want to indicate a project area, something like that, so you could add that. Maybe you also want to indicate something with a different color, so you can always layer. Maybe phase 1 and phase 2. You also have the option just to add points or lines or a particular square or circle if you don't need it to be oblong. And then you can always print your area too. So you can come over to the print option, come up with a title. I recommend you click on the advanced settings here. If you want to include things like a legend or a north arrow. See if there's any other ones we want to click on. The legend will be important, and then you can just click print over here and you'll see that little blue dot, and that's just showing that it's in process, or you can click on the print results and you can see the in process over here. So if you're trying to put together a conceptual design, you just need some background imagery. This hopefully is a useful option for folks. And then you can click on it, download it. So this is showing all the layers that you had selected in the layer list. If you have data that you'd like to add to the map, maybe you have a project area polygon, for instance. So rather than drawing, you just want to upload it, you can use this add data button and click on that. So you can add that to some of the LCFRB layers. And then if you're also just more interested in maybe a particular legislative area, you can add county boundaries, and we also have legislative districts as well too, so you can see what those look like if you want to see where your project relates to those particular boundaries. If you're trying to figure out which lead entity your project area might be in, we have lead entity boundaries. So the light green there is Lower Columbia River. So the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board lead entity area is the majority of the subbasins we'll see in the resource map. But we do have this because the white salmon subbasin does fall under Klickitat lead entity. So if you're trying to put together a surfboard, a salmon recovery funding board grant proposal, you would work with the Klickitat lead entity if it's in the white salmon subbasin. But we do have data still in terms of population data for the white salmon because we have some populations that rely on that watershed. So that is my quick walkthrough of the current functions of the Lower Columbia Salmon Resource Map. We're really excited to have it out there. I encourage everyone to play around and take a look at the data layers, the data tables, and the filtering options, and don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll continue to adapt this over time. Thank you.